right, here we go. This is a familiar position for most of you. We've all done this. This is the infamous hamstring stretch. I'm doing it by myself. I've seen this done where somebody's pushing your leg, where somebody's up against the wall, where you're leaning forward and you're doing this because your hamstrings are tight. Someone told you your hamstrings are tight. Your low back hurts, so your hamstrings must be tight. You feel pain in your hamstrings, so your hamstrings must be tight. So you must stretch them. And a lot of times people stretch them to the point of pain. People stretch them to the point of popping, especially when they have somebody else stretching them. They wind up just saying, just push as hard as you can. And that could not be further from the truth. The traditional hamstring stretch is not something that needs to be done every day, and it shouldn't be done. Most people who are stretching their hamstrings are not stretching them for the right reason. Is it a bad stretch? No. Is there other things you should be doing? Yes. If you are stretching your hamstrings because you feel your hamstrings are tight, you are not doing it correctly. You are not doing what you need to do to tighten or to loosen up your muscles. A tight muscle is a weak muscle. So that's why when we talk about hamstrings, most often everyone says my hamstrings are so tight. I don't hear a lot of people come in and say my quads are tight. That's never usually a conversation. Some people will, so I know I'm not trying to exclude those people. But most people always are in and saying my hamstrings are so tight, my low back is tight. They're not that tight, they're actually weak. And by stretching them, you aren't doing anything. I've never known anybody to stretch their way out of a hamstring issue. It never works. It is something that you've got to address outside of stretching. Now I know there's going to be people that are going to say, well, guess what? I had a little pain in my hamstring, I stretched it and it went away. You temporarily resolved the pain. You didn't resolve the issue, you just took care of the pain. You just put some of those stretch receptors on some slack, or you quieted some part of the muscle down, but you didn't fix anything. So before you go and say, I stretch my hamstrings and I feel great and it solves this problem, it doesn't solve anything. It just is a temporary solution. And most of the time, so many people wind up injuring themselves because of the fact that they insist on stretching their hamstrings. So that's why their back's tight. That's why they can't run fast. That's why the laundry list of things for stretching your hamstrings is ridiculous. It's not something you want to do. There are so many other things that you want to do besides stretching your hamstrings. So what do you do when you feel the need to stretch your hamstrings, or you feel that's what somebody's told you? What they told you is wrong. And I know everybody, that's like the go-to answer because it's the easiest answer. Lay down and stretch your hamstrings. I get it. I get why it's done. But it's not the answer, and it's not something that's going to help you, and it's not something that's going to fix the issue. So what can you do? First of all, you can roll on your hamstrings. So we're going to go back to the foam roller. If you have knots in your hamstrings, so if you're rolling on your spike roller, and if you have a flat roller, you're probably not going to feel any sort of knots. So when you feel a knot on a spike roller, you're going to stop, and you're going to feel a little bit of pain. That's where a knot is. That's where one of those trigger points are. If you have a completely flat roller and you're rolling your hamstrings, you're really not going to feel anything. If you use the stick just to kind of roll, you're not going to feel anything. The stick does not do what a foam roller does. But if you're on a flat roller or you're using the stick and you don't feel any pain, you're not going to. If you feel pain, then you've got a seriously disturbed hamstring. But most often, you're going to roll that hamstring out and you're not going to feel anything. If you're on a spike roller, though, and you roll out your hamstring, you're going to start to feel some knots in there. So you want to start by doing both legs at the same time. You're going to go all the way up to the bottom of where your glutes are, and then you're going to roll down to where your knee is, okay? That's the length of the group of your hamstring. So top of your glute all the way down to the back of the knee. Now, when you feel pain, you feel that trigger point, you want to stop on there. If you try and stretch your hamstring and there's a whole lot of knots in there, there's a whole lot of trigger points, which my guess is if you've done this for a long time and all you've done is stretch your hamstrings, and you know, of course they continuously need to be stretched, you're going to have a lot of knots in there. Stretching a knot is like trying to pull a knot out of a string. All right, so if you tie a knot in a string and you pull at either end, so you pull and you pull and you pull, you're not going to pull that knot out. You're going to end up tearing the string before you ever get the knot out. Same thing with the hamstrings. If you've got a knot in there, and most of the time, most people's knots that are in the hamstring have been there for a long time. If you try and pull the ends of that string, and you pull and you pull and you pull, and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch, that is not coming loose. All it is tearing at the ends of the muscle. You want to get that knot out, you want to break it up, you have to go on the foam roller. Now, same thing with PVC pipe. I have to say this because everyone always comes in and says, I roll with PVC pipe. It's the same thing. It is not the same thing as spike. It's just a harder, flat roller. So be careful. You can't roll out a hamstring with a flat roller. You've got to have some spikes, okay? Now, if you roll on spike and you're like, oh, I still don't feel anything, cross one leg over the other and put some pressure down on that hamstring. Do the same thing. Go all the way up to the glute and then all the way down to the back of the knee. Nice and slow. You're really looking for a tender point. You're looking for something that you want to work on. You're looking for that knot. And now let's say you're like, I'm still in pain and I rolled, I got nothing, which I find hard to believe. So now we have to concentrate on weakness. Tight muscles are weak. Hamstrings are weak. There is always a muscle imbalance between your quads and your hamstring. Your quads are always stronger, unless you are specifically training your hamstrings not to be. 90% of Americans have a quad muscle imbalance. So this front muscle is pulling harder than the back muscle. So if you're a runner that suffers with hamstring issues, if you are any sort of CrossFitter, athlete, and you suffer with chronic hamstring strains or pulls or whatever, it's because there's a weakness back there and you're not paying attention to strengthening it, and you have to strengthen it. Now we're going to go through a couple of strengthening exercises. You have to take it nice and slow, okay? It's very easy to compensate and to work around the hamstring. Like the hamstring machine at the gym, where you lay on your stomach and you curl your legs. So many people compensate with their low back on that. You're not really getting the hamstring. You may feel it a little bit in your hamstring, but if you don't do proper form, you're not going to feel it in your hamstring. So the first exercise that you want to do for the hamstring is simply just a bridge. Okay? It should go nice and easy, and then you're going to lower down. Now, if you're feeling pretty good, you can keep your butt up. You don't have to rest all the way down. You want to press through your heels. So I usually recommend lifting the toes off the ground so you get a nice contraction through the back of the legs and the glutes. That's where you should feel this. And you want to go up as high as you can. Now let's say that feels okay and you get to 30 and you're like, I don't feel anything. You can pick one leg up and then you can do the same thing. Now when you pick one leg up, what you want to watch is, you want to watch that your hips don't drop. So you're not doing this. Your hips have to stay perfectly level, and then you have to go up and down. You want to go up as high as you can and then come back down. If you can't get as high as you can with your legs down, or with both your legs down, as one of your legs down, that's a problem, okay? That's a weak point. So you really want to work that. You want to work 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 15. It's not an exercise where you're going to feel completely exhausted. This isn't something you have to load, because most hamstrings are weak even with just body weight. Let's say that exercise is easy. You're going to go up to the top, you're going to bring one leg up, and then you're just going to hold it there and then raise and lower your leg. Okay? So that is 3 progressions of strengthening your hamstring. You've got just bridges where you lift up and down. You have single leg bridges where you lift up and down but one leg's in the air. And then you have that single leg bridge with a leg lift where you're lifting your leg up and down nice and easy. Now, be aware that you don't want to cause yourself pain with any exercise. Yes, when you roll, you might have some discomfort as you roll over the knots. It might be a little bit painful to break them up. That's okay. But you never want to force a stretch. You never want to make anything so painful. And I see that so many times, and we have so many people injured because the hamstrings are aggressively stretched. Stretching the hamstrings is never the answer. It's generally something else. I gave you 4 things that it could be. It could be something completely different. But if you have hip pain, knee pain, or hamstring pain, all of this could be related to tight and weak hamstrings. Remember, a tight muscle is a weak muscle. If you or someone you know is suffering from hamstring pain or knee pain or hip pain and wants a free consultation with a doctor of physical therapy, all you have to do is call our office at 215-997-9898 and we'll be happy to get you in. Thanks and have a good night.